Welcome to your nightly descent. Tonight, you'll follow a story that begins the way many of our worst nightmares do, quietly. A man returns to his childhood home after his father's sudden death, but when his father's broken cell phone begins ringing long after the battery died, he answers. And on the other end, he hears his own voice, not from now, not from here, but from somewhere else. What begins as a warning turns into unraveling, a story of mimicry, distortion, and a voice that isn't quite his anymore. She doesn't live in the house, she lives in the cool. So lie back, loosen your grip on the waking world, and whatever happens, don't answer the phone. Not at 2:12. Not when it rings from the attic. Not when it whispers your name from inside your thoughts. This is the call I shouldn't have answered. Chapter 1. The Ringing That Came Too Late. It started the night after the funeral. I was lying on my back in the bedroom I hadn't slept in for almost 2 years, my head pressed into the same pillow I'd used as a teenager, the scent of my father's aftershave still lingering faintly in the fabric of the room. Grief does strange things to your senses. It amplifies silence, distorts familiar shadows, and stretches time into a choking thread that tightens around your throat. My father's death had been sudden. No warning signs, no illnesses, no preamble. One moment he was in the middle of his morning walk. The next he was lying on the ground with his phone clutched in his hand and a look of disbelief frozen on his face. I'd flown in from Chicago the same day, too numb to cry, too confused to ask questions. My mother had passed 5 years earlier, cancer. And after that, my father and I had grown distant, a casualty of my own guilt and his stubborn silence. That night, after the service, after the casseroles had been scraped clean and the neighbours had shuffled out into the early evening fog, I laid in my old bed, listening to the house breathe. The radiator groaned in the hallway. Pipes hummed like nervous insects. Wind pressed against the windows as though trying to whisper something through the glass. Then the phone rang. Not my cell, not the house landline, but his phone. The one the coroner had returned to me in a sealed plastic bag, its cracked screen smeared with a bit of dried blood. I'd set it on the kitchen counter, meaning to deal with it later, but I could hear it from upstairs, unmistakable, persistent, a sharp, shrill ring that shouldn't have been possible. The battery had been dead. I told myself I was imagining things. Grief again, paranoia. But then it rang again. This time I got up. I didn't want to. My skin prickled with a kind of dread that didn't belong to the moment. It felt old, ancestral, like something in my bones remembered that sound and was telling me not to go near it. I made my way downstairs in the dark. The phone was glowing. The screen was cracked like a spiderweb, but there was no mistaking the brightness, no mistaking the call. It read, "Unknown caller, 2:12 a.m. I stood there staring at it, frozen. It stopped, and then it rang again. Same number, same time. I picked it up, my thumb hovered over the answer button. Every instinct told me not to, and yet I did. Hello? At first there was only static, then breathing, rapid, wet, like someone running while crying. Hello? I said again, this time louder, harsher. Then I heard it. A voice. You have to listen to me, the voice said. It was a man's voice. Familiar. Too familiar. It was me. You're not safe. Not in the house. Not after. Then the call dropped. I stood there holding the phone for a long time after that, my thoughts empty, not racing, just gone. Like a blackboard wiped clean, the kind of fear that strips you down to only your skin. I tried calling the number back. Nothing. I checked the phone log. The call didn't exist. I sat on the couch until the sun came up, too frightened to go back upstairs, too disturbed to explain the voice. The next morning I buried the phone under a pile of my father's old clothes in the garage. I told myself if I was being ridiculous, that the brain will go to extraordinary lengths to make grief feel meaningful. But deep down, I knew better. Because it wasn't just the voice. It was the thing I saw in the reflection behind me when I answered the call. Just for a split second, standing in the kitchen doorway, watching. Chapter 2, the second message. I left the house that day. I packed a single overnight bag and drove an hour and a half to a motel in the next county. It was cheap, half-lit and stunk of mildew, but I didn't care. I needed distance. Needed to be somewhere where the walls didn't lean in when I blinked too slowly, where the shadows didn't pulse like a second heartbeat. I didn't bring his phone. I left it buried. For the rest of the day, I walked around the local town, just wandering. I bought coffee, sat on a park bench, tried to pretend the night before hadn't happened, but my hands kept shaking. I kept hearing my own voice in my head, warped and frantic. By the time I returned to the motel that night, I was exhausted. I flicked on the light and checked my phone, my real phone, for the first time all day. One missed call. Unknown number. Time, 2:12 p.m. Same timestamp, 12 hours later. My blood went cold. There was also a voicemail. I pressed play. At first, static. Then, don't hang up this time. Don't leave. You can't leave. If you go, she follows. That voice again. My voice. She's outside the house now. You opened the door. I didn't mean to answer, but I couldn't ignore it. I thought maybe this time... Static. I'm sorry. I don't know how many more times I'll get. I think it's decaying. I think time is folding. I need you to destroy the phone. You have to. Burn it. Don't just bury it. Don't. The voicemail ended mid-sentence. I stared at the phone for what felt like hours. Burn it. That night I didn't sleep. I sat in the motel chair, curtains drawn shut, lights on, every muscle in my body tense. I kept expecting a knock on the door, or worse, a call. At exactly 2:12 a.m., it rang again. I didn't answer. The phone rang once and went silent, and then the motel room phone rang. A landline, connected to the front desk. I let it ring 5 times, then I picked up. Hello? A different voice, a woman's, soft, slurred. She's found your scent, she said. Leaving doesn't matter anymore. Click. I stood slowly, phone still in my hand, staring at the front door. Outside, I heard someone breathing. Not walking, not knocking, just breathing, heavy, right up against the door. I didn't sleep that night either. I left the motel at dawn, drove straight back to the house. The sun hadn't fully risen, and the world looked dead in that in-between light. The garage was silent. I opened the old box of clothes where I'd buried the phone. It wasn't there. Not under the flannel shirt, not under the wool cap, not between the coats. Gone. I searched the garage, the laundry room, even the car. Nothing. Then I saw it, on the kitchen counter, right where it had been the first night. Screen cracked, battery full. A sticky note lay beside it, folded into a square. It wasn't my handwriting. It read, "Don't make me do this again. Burn it, please, before she learns how to follow you back." I grabbed the phone, my fingers trembling. I walked out back, filled a bucket with charcoal starter, and doused the phone. Lit a match. Dropped it in. The plastic bubbled and hissed. The screen sparked, cracked again. The fire burned for 20 minutes. I stayed until the flames died down and nothing but scorched fragments remained. I breathed, finally. I went inside, took a shower, ate a cold sandwich, and when I opened my bedroom door to change, I froze. The phone was on my pillow, fully intact, still cracked, still glowing. It rang. Chapter 3, the version that screamed. I didn't answer the phone. Not at first. I stood there for nearly a minute, staring at it where it lay on my pillow, glowing faintly against the dark cotton. Me, 6 days from now. My own name, my own voice, like a tombstone etched with my signature before I'd even died. The phone rang again, then again. On the 5th ring, I picked it up and pressed the answer button, my hand shaking so badly I nearly dropped it. "Hello?" I whispered. This time the static didn't wait. Neither did I. "Is this me?" A pause. A strange noise, wet, rattling, like someone trying to breathe through torn lungs. Then, "It's too late for this version." The voice was mine, but distorted, like something was wrong with the tape, or like someone had taken my voice and tried to rebuild it from memory. I swallowed. "What do you mean?" Another pause. I could hear something else in the background. Sobbing, shuffling footsteps. Then came the sound of a lock turning, a door creaking open. "She got in. You left the door open. You didn't burn her anchor in time." "My what?" "She needed you to answer. That's all it takes. A voice, a crack, more static. Then screaming. Loud, piercing, like someone being torn in half. It went on far too long. It didn't sound like me. Not really. It sounded like me changing. Then silence. A heavy, final silence. I looked down. The call had ended. My thumb was still hovering over the red end call button, even though the call was already dead. I dropped the phone and staggered back until my calves hit the bed. Outside, the wind picked up. Something scraped against the bedroom window, not on the window, inside it, like something was pressing against the glass from the other side, not outside, not inside, but inside the reflection. I ran out of the room. The living room was dark, too dark, like the shadows had swallowed the corners of the walls, gorging themselves on my fear. I grabbed my real phone, opened Google. I didn't even know what I was searching for. Phone calls from future self. Can you contact yourself through time? Heard my own voice on a dead man's phone. Every search led to a forum, a conspiracy, a footnote in someone's hallucination. Nothing solid, nothing that gave me a direction. Just more voices in the void. That's when the landline rang, the old rotary one in the hallway. We hadn't used it in years. My father kept it for emergencies. He'd always hated mobile phones, said they were a leash pretending to be a lifeline. I picked it up cautiously. Hello? A long silence. Then, don't hang up, please. It was my father. Dad? I whispered, my throat tight. But it wasn't him. Not really. It was his voice, but younger, frantic, like I'd caught him in the middle of something. Is this you? He asked. Me who? I replied. The right version, the right now. I gripped the phone tighter. I don't understand, I said. I've been trying for years. She found me first, but I didn't see it then. She's older than time, older than logic. She feeds on the voice. That's how she moves, through repetition, through echo. Every time you pick up, the line cut out. I stood there, heart hammering. Then the line clicked back in. She'll wear your skin like a story. Click. That night I didn't sleep. I watched every corner of the house. I turned off every phone, even unplugged the internet. I tried to remove anything that could carry a signal. But at 2:12 a.m. I heard the chirp of a phone rebooting. I ran into the kitchen. The burned phone, still cracked, still glowing, was on the countertop again. A single text message on the screen. She's not waiting anymore. The knock that wasn't a knock. The next morning, I left the house, not just to get out, but to go back. I didn't know if it would work, but I was out of options. I drove to my father's old safety deposit box. He'd given me the key in his will, but I hadn't opened it yet. The attorney mentioned it casually during probate. I assumed it was full of old bonds, or maybe my mom's jewellery. But now I wasn't so sure. The bank was grey and sunless. The kind of place where light went to die. The clerk led me to the back, down a corridor that felt oddly cold for a June morning. He unlocked the compartment, handed me the box, and left me alone. Inside were 3 things. 1, a leather-bound journal. 2, a cassette tape labelled "Do Not Play After 2:12 a.m. 3, a photograph. The photo was of me and my father standing in front of the house years ago. I was maybe 10. He had a hand on my shoulder. But something was wrong. In the upstairs window, barely visible, was a woman, pale, featureless, pressed against the glass. My hands started shaking. I opened the journal. It wasn't a diary. Not really. More like an account, a documentation of experiments, notes in frantic handwriting, descriptions of phone calls he had received after my mother's death, and over again the same phrase, underlined in red, "She comes through the answer." That night, I went back to the house. I didn't want to. But I needed answers. My father had clearly known something. He had fought this thing, prepared for it. I set up a recorder. At 2:11 a.m. I sat on the floor of the kitchen, cassette in hand, the old tape player from the deposit box sitting beside me. At exactly 12, the burned phone rang from upstairs. I ignored it. Instead, I hit play on the cassette. The audio was scratchy, warped. I could barely make out the first few words. "She's already inside." Then came something else, breathing, and then my father's voice, strained and quiet. "If you're listening to this, she hasn't taken you yet, but she's close. Don't look at her. Don't respond. Don't mimic her voice. That's how she copies you. That's how she takes your place." The tape hissed. "If you hear your own voice and you didn't speak, run." Then a loud, shrill scream. The tape ended. The house went silent. I looked up and saw a shadow move past the hallway. Not walking, gliding. I ran, down the stairs, into the basement. I slammed the door behind me. Then I heard it. Not footsteps, not knocks. Something tapping, in a pattern. Not like a knock someone makes with a hand, but like bones. Tick, tick, tick. Then a voice just beyond the door. My voice. "Let me in, please. It's me. I made it back. I escaped her. But you have to open the door." I didn't move. Then the voice spoke again, but this time it repeated a sentence from the cassette, word for word. If you hear your own voice and you didn't speak, run. Exactly the same cadence. I screamed. The lights in the basement flickered, then exploded, and from behind the door came a third voice. Not mine, not my father's. Something older. Something that giggled as it whispered, "Why do you keep answering?" Chapter 5. The Deadline. I spent the night in the basement, too terrified to move. The door never opened, though I could hear footsteps overhead, slow, dragging footsteps that didn't belong to me. Footsteps that paused every now and then as if listening. By morning, the sounds stopped. Light bled through the edges of the basement window. I cracked the door, half expecting her to be waiting, smiling with a face that looked like mine. But the house was empty, or at least it looked that way. I didn't dare speak. I'd learned now. She could mimic anything she heard. A breath, a word, a whimper. The more she heard, the better she became. The journal didn't say where she came from. It only called her the mimic, a parasite, a hungry ghost that didn't possess so much as it replaced. She latched onto sound, folding herself into a voice until it was impossible to tell who was real. But there was something else in the final pages, a warning. If she learns your full voice, you'll stop existing before you know it. I called someone. My friend Marcus, one of the few people who still tolerated my erratic calls. I hadn't told him everything. How could I? But I gave him just enough. He came. It was the first time someone had been in the house besides me since the funeral. As soon as he stepped through the threshold, I saw it in his eyes, a flicker of unease. "You sure this place isn't haunted?" he said, half joking. I didn't laugh. We sat in the kitchen. I tried explaining the phone, the calls, the burned phone returning, the voice that sounded like me but wasn't. He didn't believe me, not entirely, but he believed I was scared, and to him that was enough. Then the phone rang. 12 p.m. This time on Marcus's phone. His eyes went wide. How'd someone get this number? I shook my head. Don't answer. But he was already holding it, staring. And then, before I could stop him, he tapped, accept. "Hello?" I watched his face change. The colour drained from it, his brow furrowed in confusion. He handed me the phone, his hand shaking. "They asked for you," he said. I pressed the phone to my ear and heard me say, "She already heard him too. You've doomed him." The call ended. Marcus stood. "What the hell was that?" "Who was that? Why did it sound like?" Then he stopped. We both heard it. From upstairs. Another Marcus, laughing. He ran, out the front door into his car and peeled down the street so fast I thought he might crash. I didn't blame him, but the damage was done. She'd heard him now too, and I'd seen the pattern, how it always started, one voice at a time. That night I slept in the garage, not because it was safe, but because I didn't trust any part of the house anymore. I didn't trust me. I set up cameras, motion detectors, audio recorders. I needed proof, needed to know when it started, and just before midnight one of the motion alarms pinged. The kitchen. I pulled up the live feed and saw myself standing in the middle of the room, motionless, head tilted, arms slack, but I was in the garage, watching. The other me raised a hand and pointed to the ceiling, toward the attic. Then it smiled and said nothing, just moved its lips soundlessly. I muted the feed, and still, somehow, I heard it. Behind me, a whisper. My own voice saying, "Stop watching, start listening." Chapter 6. Static Ghosts. I burned every phone in the house that night, every single one. The house landline, my dad's emergency mobile, even my own cell. I dropped them in a bucket of lighter fluid in the backyard, lit a match, and didn't look away until all I could smell was molten plastic and scorched metal. And still, at 2:12 a.m., a phone rang. This time it wasn't a ringtone, it was a dial tone, echoing faintly through the vents. I followed it, slowly, with a flashlight and a crowbar. It led me upstairs, into the attic. The air grew colder as I climbed. The hatch door creaked open with a sound like skin tearing. The attic was full of dust, insulation, and somehow a rotary phone. Sitting on a broken stool in the far corner, the dial was spinning on its own. The receiver was off the hook. I picked it up. My hand trembled, and then I heard her, not speaking, repeating every word I'd ever said on a call, out of order, layered, looped. My voice in dozens of tones, stacked over each other in a disgusting vocal pile. She's coming, burn it too late, she's smiling, don't breathe, don't mimic, I'm sorry, Dad, she's inside the wall, she heard you, she is you. Then, buried deep beneath the noise, a new voice emerged. One I hadn't heard before. Low, guttural, like something buried in sand and insects. It spoke one sentence. You've already answered. I dropped the receiver, backed away. I was halfway down the attic stairs when I heard the scratching. Not from the walls, from inside my head. Words, spoken in my own thoughts. Let me finish what you started. Let me speak without you. Let me breathe. Let me out. I screamed, ran to the bathroom, threw cold water on my face. When I looked in the mirror, I wasn't blinking. Not me, anyway. My reflection stared at me, unblinking, lips slightly parted, like it was waiting. It didn't move when I did, didn't raise its hand when I did, just stared. Then it smiled and mouthed something I couldn't hear. I turned the mirror to face the wall and left the bathroom door open, too afraid to hear it knock from the other side. I tried to warn Marcus. I called from a payphone 2 towns over. He didn't answer, but his voicemail did, and the voice that played back was mine, but I hadn't recorded that. I'm sorry I brought her with me, it said. She's learning so fast now. She says thank you. That night I dreamed I was trapped inside a phone line, wrapped in coils of wire, screaming into empty signals. No one answered, because I already had. To be continued. Chapter 7. The Answer That Answered Back. I stopped trying to sleep. I stopped pretending the house was safe. I kept the lights on, every bulb in every room burning like a ward. It didn't help. The shadows didn't need darkness anymore. The mimic had grown smarter, more alive. It no longer needed a call to speak to me. Now it spoke through everything. Through the television static, the wind through the vents, the clicks of the stove cooling down. Sometimes it whispered things I hadn't even said yet. Sometimes it laughed in my voice before I did. 3 nights ago, I set up my father's old answering machine again. I needed to know what she was becoming. I left it on and left the house just to see what message might be left when I wasn't around to hear it. When I returned, there were 6 voicemails. I played the first. It was the sound of my father, coughing, wheezing, saying, "Don't believe any version of me after the 3rd call. They wear skin like masks, but they're all hollow underneath." The second was worse. It was my own voice, garbled, distorted, crying, but I couldn't remember ever sounding like that. "She's inside the wires now. You didn't burn it right. You left pieces." That's all she needed. One piece, one echo. She grows in loops. She grows in skipped steps. The 3rd message was only static, until the very end. A child's voice. "Daddy, I don't have a child. I never did." The 4th message was clear, so much so that it chilled me more than the others. It was my voice, flat and composed, almost amused. "You've already been replaced. You're just the last one to notice." 5th, more static. 6th, that one didn't sound like me. It didn't sound human. It just said, "I'm not on the line anymore. I am the line." Then faintly, "Pick up." I tore the answering machine apart, smashed the tape, burned what I could in the sink. The fire hissed like it was resisting, like it didn't want to take what I fed it. I started hearing phones ringing in my dreams. Worse, I started answering them, and each time I'd wake with a new scar, a new bruise, a new scratch across my chest that hadn't been there the day before. I found a voicemail on my real phone 2 days ago. That phone hadn't had service in weeks, not since I tossed the SIM. I played it anyway. It said, "She'll wear your memories like gloves. She'll call someone you love and be you. They'll answer and you'll vanish, replaced one word at a time." I tried to call Marcus. This time, he answered. But it wasn't him, not really. There was a pause. Then the voice said, carefully, "She hasn't perfected you yet, but she's close. You're very talkative in dreams." I screamed and threw the phone through the window. It landed in the yard. Then rang again. Chapter 8, The History of Silence. I had one option left, a theory, a desperate one. I would try to go offline, not just off-grid, off-voice. No talking, no sounds, nothing to echo, nothing to record. I sealed the house, padded the walls, removed everything that could transmit or reflect sound. No phones, no radios, no mirrors, no speakers. I wrote notes instead of speaking. I wore earplugs, then noise-cancelling headphones over them. I stopped humming. Stopped thinking in words. For 36 hours it worked. I didn't hear her. I didn't see her. The air was still. But the silence, it was unnatural, pressurized, like the house was holding its breath. That's when the scratching started again, but not from a wall, from inside my head. Not a voice this time. A message. Do you miss the sound of yourself yet? I tried to ignore it, tried to recite numbers in my mind to block her out, but she found her way in. She always did. The next message wasn't in my mind. It was on my skin. Carved, thin, clean lines, like writing done with a razor. Across my thigh in trembling strokes. You're not quiet in your dreams. I had to know. Had to understand the endgame, why she chose me, why the calls began after my father died. I returned to the attic, took my father's journal and flipped to the final page. There, in a desperate scrawl, was one final paragraph. She doesn't kill you, she speaks as you. Over and over until everyone forgets the version that didn't call. She doesn't want you silent. She wants you to speak first so she can be the echo. Underneath was one last sentence, just 3 words. Underlined twice. Don't answer again. I took that page, folded it, slipped it into my pocket. I was preparing to leave, really leave this time. Maybe find a monastery, a cave, somewhere silence lived like a religion. But then my real phone rang, except I'd smashed it. Weeks ago, and still it glowed from the floor, unbroken, as though it had never been touched. 2:12 a.m. Call from future you. I didn't pick it up. I couldn't. I just watched it ring. But this time it didn't stop. 30 minutes, an hour. 2. It rang until dawn. The screen never dimmed. The battery never died. The air grew thick and hot like I was being cooked slowly from the inside. And when it finally stopped, there was no relief. Just a text. 1 word. Listened. I looked in the mirror, and the man looking back wasn't waiting for me to move anymore. He blinked on his own, then smiled, then spoke. Chapter 9. The Echo Room. I tried to convince myself I still existed, that I was more than just the last breath before the voice took over, that I was real, and the thing on the other side of the mirror wasn't. But when I pressed my palm to the glass, the reflection didn't move. It watched. Then its mouth opened, and I heard it speak without hearing a sound. Your echo is stronger than you are now. You should be proud. The phone, my phone, the one that shouldn't have worked anymore, started ringing constantly. Not just at 2:12, not just at night. Every minute, everywhere. I turned off the power to the house, ripped out the wiring, set fire to the walls, though the flames barely took. Still it rang, in the sink drain, in the humming fridge, in the dial tone of my own heartbeat. No matter what I did, the call came through. I knew what she was doing. She was conditioning me, tearing down the last barriers between me and her, between the voice I used and the voice she became. There was one thing left, the crawl space. My father never let me go down there. He'd padlocked the access panel shut and covered it with heavy boxes. I hadn't touched it in years. Now I had to. When I broke the lock and pulled the panel open, a wave of warm, rotten air hit me. The smell of mildew, copper, and something older, decomposing memory. Inside, the crawl space wasn't empty. There were recordings, hundreds of them. Tape decks, reels labelled cassettes, all catalogued with names and dates. Some were labelled My Voice Uncorrupted. Others, Mimic Active. One box just said, Failures. I found a tape player, loaded the most recent reel and pressed play. It started with silence, then my father's voice. He was crying. She got your mother first, through the chemo calls. The hospice nurse said she talked to herself at night, but I knew it wasn't her voice. Not really. More silence. I tried to stop it. Thought if I recorded it, contained it, I could study her, trap her. But all I did was give her new doors to step through. Then came my voice, warped, screaming in a pitch I'd never heard come from my own throat. And then, Dad, please, I'm still me. A long pause. A gunshot, tape-ended. There was blood on the back wall of the crawl space. A message scratched into the plaster with shaking hands. Voices are prisons. That night I unplugged everything again, shut every door, sat in the centre of the living room and waited. At 2:12 a.m. the ringing started. I didn't answer, but the room began to tremble anyway. The walls warped, the windows pulsed, the furniture vibrated with whispers I couldn't understand. And then she came in. Not through a door, not from the attic, from me. She peeled herself out of my own skin like a second version of me hatching from the first, and she smiled. Finally, she said, "You're silent enough for me to fill the space." Chapter 10. The Call That Was Never Meant for Me. This is being written from a place I don't understand. It's my house, but not. The furniture's in the same position. The photos are the same. But everything is cleaner, neater. No dust, no ash, no broken glass, no mirrors. And I can't hear my voice anymore, not even in my head. She took it, left me like a chalk outline of who I used to be. I move through this house like a ghost now, unable to scream, unable to speak. My reflection moves as it should, but it smiles when I don't. She's using me now. Marcus called last night, not to me, to her. She answered, in my voice. Told him she was fine, that she was getting better, that she just needed space. I watched her lips move from inside the mirror, watched the words I never said shape the world around me. She's rewriting my life one conversation at a time. Each call she makes changes something. A memory, a relationship, a future. The last text I saw on my old phone before it disappeared was from a number I didn't recognize. It said, "Who is this?" And I didn't know how to answer anymore. Tonight she's hosting a dinner. Friends I haven't seen in years are coming. She's making my favorite dish, telling my stories, wearing my face. But her voice is sharper now, like the sound of me with all the softness filed away. They don't notice the difference. They never do. I found one final tape in the crawl space this morning. It wasn't labelled, just sat there like it had been waiting. I played it and heard my voice. Not the mimic, not the scream. Just me, but older, tired. I don't know if this will reach you, but if it does, know this. She only needed one thing to get in. You don't remember it, do you? The first call? The one before the funeral. I froze, because I did remember. Now it came back like a jolt through bone, a blocked number. Weeks before he died, I'd answered without thinking, and a woman had whispered, "Can I speak to the real one?" And I had laughed, said speaking. She hadn't spoken again, because that's all she'd needed. I don't know what this world is now. I don't know what I am, but I've stopped answering, stopped speaking. And still, she gets stronger because someone keeps answering, and someday soon that someone will be you. You'll get a call. Unknown number, 2:12 a.m. Maybe you'll hesitate, maybe you'll hear your voice on the other end, begging, pleading, just one word, help. And you'll say, "Hello?" And that's how she moves, from me to you. The end.